ever get thrown into a project at work and suddenly you realize you need to read a ton of white papers?
Oh, yeah.
It can be kind of intimidating.
Yeah, definitely.
So today on the show, we're really going to deep dive on white papers, like really give you the cheat codes to understand them, not just like what they are,
Yeah.
but how to get through them.
Right.
And we've got a great article by Curt Robbins to help us with this.
He's great.
Yeah, he really seems to know his stuff, so we're going to lean on his expertise a lot today.
Definitely. And I think it's important for us to figure out, why companies even spend their time on these things.
Yeah, because it's got to be a pretty big investment to put one of these together.
For sure.
So Curt gets into that, but he kind of starts with the basics.
The what is a white paper?
Exactly, like what is this thing? So it's kind of like if you took a really in-depth article, like the kind you'd read if you really wanted to understand a topic,
Yeah.
but then you gave it a bit of like a persuasive angle, like a really smart essay.
Right. So it's trying to convince you of something.
Exactly.
And one thing I think a lot of people don't realize is that white papers, they're everywhere. This isn't like a niche thing.
It's not just for academics.
No, not at all. Like Curt, in this article, he talks about how he's worked on white papers for all sorts of industries, like tech, obviously, but even like wellness and stuff.
Wellness supplements, I think you mentioned.
Yeah, so they're everywhere. It's kind of wild.
Which is what I love about doing these deep dives, because you start to realize how these things are kind of behind the scenes in like every industry.
Totally shaping how we see things.
Yeah, but the good news is that they all kind of follow a similar structure.
They do, which helps make them a little less intimidating once you get it.
For sure, and Curt breaks down these key sections.
Which is kind of like having X-ray vision for these things.
Right, you can see right through them.
Yeah, you can see what they're trying to do, how they're trying to convince you.
Exactly, so let's get into it. So first up, you've got the table of contents.
Which don't skip.
I know. I used to be guilty of that, especially for the really long ones. But honestly, it's like having a road map.
It is.
It tells you where you're going.
And if it's a well-organized table of contents, that usually means it's a well-organized argument in the paper itself.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like you can tell right away if the authors really know what they're talking about.
Yeah, you can spot the BS pretty quick.
I-
Okay, so after the table of contents, you've got the executive summary, and this is where the magic happens.
Right.
Or doesn't.
Right, this is it.
Imagine you have 30 seconds to convince someone to read your whole white paper.
Oh man, the pressure.
Right, that's the executive summary. It's got to be good.
Yeah, it's got to grab you, make you want to keep reading.
Totally. And then Curt reminds us about the intro.
Which is more important than some people realize.
Yeah, so many people just skip right over it. But it's not just there to, like, set the stage.
It's about building trust.
Right, like, why should we trust that this information is good? Why should we trust these authors?
Exactly. It's like a handshake.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Now, it can either make you feel at ease or make you want to run for the hills.
Okay, so we're through the intro. We've shaken hands. Now we're ready for the main course, which is the body.
This is where the meat of the argument is. All the juicy details.
All the data, all the research, it's all got to be in there.
And this is where you can tell if they're just making stuff up or if they've actually got the goods to back it all up.
Right. Are they full of hot air, or do they actually know what they're talking about?
Exactly.
And then, of course, we need a good ending. Got to have a good conclusion.
Can't just leave us hanging.
Right. It's not just about repeating what you already said, but like making those takeaways stick.
Yeah. This is where you really connect the dots for the reader and tell them, so what?
Like, here's why this matters.
Here's what you should do with this information.
Okay, so those are like the core elements of any good white paper. But then Curt also mentions a few optional extras.
Like the bonus features.
Yeah, exactly. Like the index and glossary.
Which are great if you need them.
Right. And Curt makes a great point here. These things should be there to serve the reader, not just to make the document longer.
Yes. Don't just add fluff for no reason.
Respect the reader's time.
Exactly.
So having that good structure, that's like half the battle, right?
It's a good foundation.
Yeah, but then you got to make it sing.
Got to bring it to life.
And Curt's got some really good advice on like the actual writing part of this.
Which honestly applies to pretty much any kind of writing. It's good advice in general.
Yeah, it's like communication 101.
For sure.
So first up, he says, be objective.
Which seems obvious, but
It's harder than it sounds.
it is because everyone has an agenda, right?
Right. And nobody wants to read something that just feels like a sales pitch.
Exactly. We can smell that a mile away.
Right. Like you're reading an article and you realize halfway through, oh, this is just an ad.
The worst.
So a good white paper has got to build trust by being neutral,
Oh.
even if they are trying to advocate for a specific thing.
Right. It's like you can present your case, but you got to present both sides.
Right. Like, let's be objective about this.
Be transparent.
Yes. Transparency is key.
Otherwise, you just sound like that used car salesman.
Oh, yeah. Nobody trusts a used car salesman.
Right, but you trust that friend who knows a lot about cars
Yes.
because they're giving you the straight talk.
Exactly. Okay, so be objective. It's number one. What else we got?
Number 2, edit and proofread meticulously.
Oh my gosh, yes.
This is huge.
So important. I mean, it seems obvious, but
Well, we've all been guilty of sending that email with a typo.
oh yeah, or like a really embarrassing autocorrect.
Oh, God, don't even get me started.
But for real though, it's about respecting the reader's time, right?
Totally. Nobody wants to wade through a poorly written document.
Especially a long one, and these things can get long.
For sure. So make sure it's clear, make sure it's concise, no typos.
And Curt really emphasizes clarity because, like, even if you don't have any typos,
If it's just a jumbled mess of words,
yeah, nobody's going to read it.
it's got to be easy to understand.
Okay, so we've got be objective, edit carefully, and then this next one is something that Curt calls knowing your audience.
Which is so important for anything, really.
Any kind of communication.
Whether it's a white paper or an email or just talking to someone you know.
Right, you got to know who you're talking to.
Exactly.
Like I was trying to explain this new algorithm to my mom the other day,
Oh, no.
and I totally lost her.
Yeah, you can't go full tech jargon on someone who's not in that world.
Right, so I had to like take a step back and explain it in a way that she would understand.
Exactly. Use analogies, simplify things.
And then it finally clicked for her.
It's like speaking different languages almost.
Yeah, totally. And it's the same with white papers. You got to know who you're writing for.
Are you writing for experts or for beginners?
Right, because that changes everything.
Your tone, your vocabulary, everything.
Okay, so we're really seeing a theme here. Be objective, edit well, know your audience, and then this next one is key. Provide supporting evidence.
You got to back up your claims.
Right, you can't just say something and expect people to believe it just because you said it.
Trust but verify, as they say.
Exactly. So what kind of evidence are we talking about here?
Data's always good.
Right, hard numbers.
Research findings, case studies.
Oh yeah, case studies are great because they show how it actually works in the real world.
Exactly. And Curt even mentions testimonials.
Right, like social proof.
Exactly. If other people are saying good things about it, that lends credibility.
It's like building a case in court. You got to have the evidence.
Otherwise, the jury's going to throw it out.
And then last but not least, clear and concise language. Everybody's favorite.
Duh. Golden rule of writing.
Right. Just get to the point.
Nobody wants to read a novel when they're trying to understand a complex topic.
And use images, too.
Oh, yeah. Visuals are huge.
That picture's worth 1,000 words, right?
Exactly. So use charts, graphs, diagrams, anything that can help get the point across more effectively.
So it's really about making it easy for the reader to understand.
That's what it all comes down to.
Respect their time, respect their intelligence.
Make it enjoyable, even.
Okay, so we've talked about the structure, we've talked about the writing, but now I'm wondering.
You know, it's funny you should say that. Like, are white papers still relevant? Because
Yeah.
I was just reading something about how even with, like, you know, all the short form content out there, like even with TikTok and everything.
Like, everyone's attention span is like 5 seconds.
Exactly. But people are actually craving more and more, like, long form stuff.
Really?
Yeah, it's like
Huh. So like they want both.
they want it all. It's like they want the snacks,
Mhm.
but they also want, like, a nice, satisfying meal
Okay, yeah.
and a good white paper that's like a meal.
That's a good way to put it.
It's got all the nutrition.
But then how do you make it, I don't know, digestible?
Right. Like, how do you keep people engaged when
Yeah.
their attention spans are shrinking?
Exactly.
Well, it goes back to knowing your audience.
Right.
Like we were saying before. And
Mhm.
Curt talks about this too. Like, it's not enough to just, like, throw information at people.
Right. You got to make it fun.
Yeah. You got to make it fun. You got to make it engaging.
Okay, so how do you make a white paper fun?
Well, think about what you, like, when you're reading online, like, what keeps you scrolling?
Okay, so like,
Headings that are clear.
yeah,
Bullet points.
bullet points are my jam.
Images.
Oh, yeah. Visuals are key.
And even, like, interactive stuff.
Oh, yeah. I was just reading one.
Really?
Yeah, and it had these links to like videos and stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it was great. I actually read the whole thing.
That's awesome. See, it can be done.
Yeah, so it's not like white papers are stuck in the past or anything.
Yeah, they're evolving.
Using technology.
Exactly. It's like taking all those best practices we talked about, like
Mhm.
the clarity, being concise, knowing your audience,
Right.
but then, like, giving it that extra boost with technology.
Okay, I'm convinced.
Good.
So for anyone listening who's like, white papers,
Boring.
don't knock it till you try it.
Give them a chance. They're more interesting than you think.
Yeah, and next time you see one, don't just like toss it aside.
Really engage with it.
Yeah, look for those things we talked about.
The structure, the evidence.
Is it clear? Is it concise? Is it trying to be engaging?
Yeah, you might actually learn something.
Might even enjoy yourself. Right. Who doesn't love a good deep dive? And that is our show for today. Thanks for joining us for this exploration of white papers. Hopefully you learned a thing or two. And we'll see you next time for another deep dive.